What you call it, 25 minutes before the hour, 8 o'clock, Thetha Talk around the table. The name is Alex Ranuga, frequency 100.6. Streaming, written Durban, Cape Town, everywhere. Written when I'm on Thetha FM, Limpopo. Tell them that they can stream us wherever they are. Harare Chafela only, these 500,000 listeners that are listening. We appreciate so much the number that is here tonight when I'm on Thetha FM. I said it earlier that I will be having a national guest tonight when I'm over Thetha FM. Good evening, sir.
Good evening, and thanks so much for having me.
Yes, sir.
It's lovely to be here. I've got many memories of the Vaal and of Everton, of coming here as part of political campaigns, even in the days of the underground struggle, also coming here as part of Umkhonto where people fighting, working in the underground as a member of the ANC. So yeah, when I was driving, coming here, some of those memories came flooding back again.
Others, they will think Alex is lying at a community radio station. He said he will be talking to Carl and whatever that is. Can you tell them the name and the surname and the combat name and everything and that yourself? Because when I said it, others were saying, for real, do you think you can get the men to come down all the way? I said, he's coming tonight.
I'm here. I joined Umkhonto in 1979.
Yes.
And my combat name, you're going to laugh because, of course, I'm a white chap. So they couldn't have given me a name that wouldn't have gelled with that. So my combat name was Bruce.
All right.
Now, you see, every time I say it, everyone laughs. I worked with a number of comrades that are well known in South Africa today, still among them Billy Matsetla.
Yes.
In fact, Comrade Billy was one of the people that initially recruited me into the ANC and into MK, and I still have a very close relationship with him, yes.
You talk about, at least they cannot call me a racist. You break it up, saying as a white folk. In those days, you did not have that pressure because of the skin to went through whatever you went through. You had a choice to take the side of comfortability, living a nice life, just pretending like you don't see what is happening in our country. But you took a stand to say, despite few of us, your John Slovos, actually, personally, I know you and John Slovo, that the people that I know that they were very active, especially in politics and all that. Now, what made you? Because I will be coming to that of the persecutions that we see now. But people, they cannot have the background of, this person is being persecuted today, but he chose out of everything that he saw to say, you know what, I'd rather be criticized of my race, of my brothers, my cousin, my country, my fellow citizens, of my skin, because of I want to make a difference to this country that others, they cannot even recognize or realize or acknowledge for that matter. What made you, what pushed you to say, you know what, I will go to exile, I will fight. If it takes me to prison, it's fine. If it kills me, it's fine. Because we know the apartheid regime, it was very brutal and cruel. But you took that stand, and those people, they couldn't take any excuses. But what made you to join?
I was very young.
Yes, sir.
I was 16 years old when, for the first time, I went into what was then known as the Black Townships.
All right. Yes, sir.
Now, in itself, that is already an indictment about apartheid. But
yes.
It took me 16 years
yes.
as a South African to go into the living areas of the majority of the black people of this country.
All right.
And I was shocked because the life that I lived as a middle-class white South African was so different
All right.
from the lives that I saw in Soweto,
Okay.
the conditions of what people lived under, the schools that I saw, the difference between my school and the schools in Soweto.
Okay.
And then on top of that also, I went into some of the mining hostels.
Yes, sir.
And I saw the terrible, dingy conditions there. And one of the things that really touched me
Yes.
is I was there meeting with people, and there was an elderly gentleman, a mine worker. He was sitting on a tin, on a paraffin tin. And he saw this
This
young...
one 5 liter or 10 liter?
Yes, I think it was a 10 liter.
10 liter, yes.
He saw this young white son, slotneus we say in Afrikaans, coming in, and he jumped up and he brought this tin for me to sit on. And it unsettled me. This man could have been my father, perhaps even my grandfather. But he brought this to me. And I started asking questions, but why do we have this kind of society?
Mm.
And in 1976, when I was in grade 11, then we called it Standard 9,
Yes.
the Soweto uprising started. And I started asking questions at my school. I was in a school in Roodepoort, in fact in Witpoortjie,
All right.
Afrikaans school with an Afrikaans name, Hoërskool die Adelaar. And I said, but I saw the conditions in Soweto. I saw what the problems are that young black African people in South Africa are experiencing. I think these young students have a reason to be angry.
All
I
right.
think they've got a reason to start protesting.
Yes.
And you can imagine in that Afrikaans school how they responded.
Mm-hmm.
It was negative.
Yes.
In fact, the headmaster of the school wanted to expel me out of the school.
All right.
My mum and dad had to be brought to the school
Yes.
to try and get them to come and argue with the headmaster to say, please, let this young son of ours stay in the school.
Yes.
So that was the background, how I started to be politically conscientized.
All right.
And I kept on saying to myself, you know, you realize apartheid is wrong.
Yeah.
I also grew up, of course, in the Dutch Reformed Church.
All right.
Now, I'm sure you've heard in the Dutch Reformed Church of this theology, what they call the theology of apartheid.
Mm-hmm.
That they believe that in the way they interpret the Bible, that black people are inferior to white people.
Yes.
In fact, they even take those biblical texts in the Bible about the nation of Israel,
Mm-hmm.
and they compare themselves to the nation of Israel.
Mm-hmm.
And in the process,
Yes.
they then say, no, you see, we are the nation of Israel, therefore we are privileged, and those people in the black community are the heathens, and
Okay.
therefore they are the ones that should be oppressed. And I said, no. This can't be a proper interpretation
Mm-hmm.
of the Bible. And I was going at that stage also through the process of being accepted into my church. You know,
Okay.
there's a process which we call in Afrikaans katechese. It
Yes.
is the acceptance into the church.
Yeah, in Sotho they said, Katisman.
Yes, that's it.
Yeah.
So in the meeting with the dominee, I started asking questions, and the dominee became very angry.
Mm-hmm.
And once again, my poor parents were called in and said, you know, this son of yours is a real troublemaker. Now he's even questioning our interpretation of the Bible.
No.
So that was the background for me as I started being conscientized. Then I went, after school, I went to the Rand Afrikaans University, which is today known as the University of Johannesburg. And
That is UJ.
UJ. I came there with this questioning and this concern about apartheid.
All right.
So I started participating in student politics,
Mm.
and I made a call in the student political environment to say,
Yes.
look guys, I think that we should have this university open for all the people in this country, also for the black people.
All right.
And I also said, I think that Nelson Mandela should be released from prison.
Okay.
You can imagine that in those days, the Rand Afrikaans University wasn't the same as what UJ is today. Then it was an all-white university.
Wow.
It was totally white.
Not even one black.
There were a few postgraduate black students which were given special permission. But the principle was this was a white university. So I then started a campaign. I went out in the evening. I put up posters in some of the restaurants at the university saying, release Mandela and equal education. They caught me on the CCTV cameras doing it, and they expelled me from the university.
But the core students, they didn't ask you, what's happening? What's wrong with you?
No, they thought I was crazy. Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't make sense.
My parents were angry. Remember, my dad was a lower middle class Afrikaner working man. He worked on the railways as a fitter and turner.
Yeah, right.
He wasn't a rich man. The bursaries that I got to go to university was given to me by the Afrikaanse Taal en Kultuurvereniging, which was an Afrikaans organization supporting middle class, lower middle class, poor whites. So now I get kicked out of the university saying apartheid is wrong. That institution that gave the bursaries to me, they said, hey, you better pay those bursaries back. My poor dad now had to go and mortgage the home, the house, to pay back the bursaries. They were angry.
The sacrifice now.
He was angry, and they don't understand. Because remember, they come from very conservative white Afrikaner background. Deep Afrikaners.
Yeah, I get
Remember, my parents, although I was in Johannesburg for my secondary education, my parents came out of what was known in those days as the West Transvaal. Now today it's known as the Northwest Province. From a town with the name of Zeerust.
That was not far from Terrible Lunch.
That's right, not far from Ventersdorp.
Yes.
And they had the same ideologies, the same understanding. So my dad got angry and chased me out of the house. He said, I've had enough, go. I'm no longer acknowledging you as my son.
You're a black sheep of the family.
Yeah, no, and I ended up for a couple of weeks on the street. I didn't just walking around, trying to figure out what do I do now. And then one day I saw a poster on a street pole that said that the then Dean of Johannesburg, Father Simeon Nkwane, was fasting and praying because of the way in which people are being evicted from informal settlements, from squatter camps.
Which year was this, if you remember?
This was 1978. Yeah, 78.
I was not even born.
That was 1978.
Yeah.
So I said, look, it seems to me this priest is concerned about the things I worry about. I must find him. So I started asking around. I found out he's the dean of St. Mary's Cathedral here in central Johannesburg. So I went there. And the secretary of Father Nkwane was amazed. This young Afrikaner boerseun come there. He says he wants to meet with the dean. So eventually I saw him. She allowed me to see him. He was also surprised. What am I there for? So I explained to him, look, I've been thrown out of my home because I say apartheid is wrong. I'm now literally on the streets. I'm homeless. I thought he thought I was perhaps not what I was telling him. But he said, come back tomorrow. I'm going to ask someone to come to my office who will understand you better than what I can understand. So the next day, I went back and I got a fright, I got a surprise, because there was a white gentleman sitting in his office with a safari suit. You know what a safari suit is?
Yeah, a farmer's...
yeah, and the short trousers, not even the long trousers, with those socks that they pull up high and they
Vrystaat farmers there.
Yeah, Vrystaat and West Transvaal boere.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh gosh, this man has gone and called the security police. This man is a policeman. Now they're going to arrest me. But that wasn't the case. The person who was sitting there was Dr. Beyers Naudé.
No dear.
And Dr. Beyers Naudé was for many years the moderator of the Dutch Reformed Church. But he turned against apartheid. And he started fighting apartheid. In fact, Beyers Naudé's father was the founder of the Broederbond, the Afrikaner Broederbond.
My goodness.
But Beyers Naudé turned against apartheid.
You are not alone in this.
And he stood up and he fought against it. And he said that apartheid is a sin. In fact, that apartheid is a heresy. So then I started talking to Umbay.
Yeah.
And Umbay understood me, of course, much better than Father Nkwane could, because we are both Afrikaners.
Yeah.
So Umbay became my mentor. He became the father that my own father could not be to me. And we became very close. He helped me to understand the political environment in South Africa. He introduced me to many of the black liberation fighters and leaders in South Africa. It was through him that I eventually also made contact with Comrade Oliver Tambo. It was through him that I eventually started understanding what the policies of the African National Congress is all about.
Mr. I wanted to come on that. Unfortunately, I'm sorry to kick your throat, because my question was going to be that there were many revolutionary political parties.
Yeah.
Why ANC? Why did you choose the African National Congress specifically?
Because the ANC was the largest liberation movement, and also it stood for a non-racial society, but in an understanding that liberation must first and foremost be brought to black and African people. And also because of what I heard Comrade Oliver Tambo say when he talked about full liberation. You know, OR always spoke not just about racism. OR always said racism is only one of the oppressions that we must be liberated from. I remember I used to sit hiding away in my back room listening to Radio Freedom, and he would speak about this liberation that must also be economic liberation. And he would say that racism and economic oppression go hand in hand, it dovetails. Wow. And you must make sure that when you want to have full freedom, you can't just have freedom from racism, but you must also have freedom from economic oppression. So that what he said, it grabbed me. That brought me to the point where I said, if this is what the African National Congress stands for, then I want to join this organization. I want to become part of this majority movement in our country with its long history. And I started reading how the ANC was formed in 1912. I started reading about all the leaders of the ANC, also the writings of Chief Albert Luthuli, that incredible speech that Chief Albert Luthuli made when he got the Nobel Peace Prize, where he spoke about, you know, freedom for all the people of South Africa. I found in his words also the place for myself as a white Afrikaner, that I can become a liberated person in this country.
Many in politics, they love to talk about, to say, you were recruited or did you volunteer? One of the two, because somehow it's like they're competing. Like, no, look, I was recruited because I was needed, or I volunteered because it was not fashionable. Between the two, where do you fall in?
I volunteered. I wanted to become a member of the ANC.
Wow.
I went to Umbay and I said, look, I've now fought through this, all of this. I've considered everything carefully.
Yes.
And I want to become a member of the ANC. But when I said that, I also said, I have carefully looked at how the apartheid system works, and it is a dreadfully oppressive system.
Yes, sir.
And because it is a dreadfully oppressive system, we must oppose it in every means, in every way possible, also through the armed struggle. So I embraced the armed struggle. It was not easy for me to do that. Initially, I wanted to follow the route of non-violence, of peaceful resistance. But I saw what was happening. I saw how South Africans, when they wanted to resist peacefully, were brutally repressed. and that there was no space for people to be able, in a peaceful way, to oppose the system. So I said, look, if I join the ANC, the African National Congress has an armed wing. I cannot act here as if I don't know it. I must say, if I join the ANC, that I also join the armed struggle. And that is exactly what I did. I made that decision. I was influenced by the writings, the theological writings of a German theologian with the name of Dietrich Bonhoeffer.
Wow.
Now, that German theologian in the 1930s and 40s
Yes, sir.
was opposed to Nazism in Germany. And he came to a point where he developed a theology where he said, when a system is so evil that you have to decide to use violence to oppose that system, it is a choice that you make for a lesser evil against a worse evil.
Thank you, sir.
And that was when he decided to get involved also in violent opposition to Hitler. He tried to assassinate Hitler twice.
Okay.
He didn't succeed. Eventually he was killed by Hitler. But those writings, he wrote beautiful pieces in his prison writings when he was kept in prison before he was executed by the Nazis. And I read them, and that influenced me also to understand that it was necessary for me to also join the armed struggle of the African National Congress and of the people of South Africa.
That's correct. Mamuda Thetha FM, it's 4 minutes before the hour 8 o'clock. I'm getting deeper now. The introduction you had, he can write a book. You know, this time that we have with him, it's a bit short. I'm trying to cut it up there and there because of time. We don't have much time.
And forgive me for talking too much.
No, I understand. We invited you all the way for this, by the way. 3 minutes. I'm going to give you, all you guys, to ask questions. I will give you, not now, but I will ask questions for now. I will open lines in a certain time, WhatsApp lines and everything. We live on YouTube. We live. And on mainstream, we there. Tell them on Facebook. Alex Ranuga, Uwalinda de Kalmias. He's here live when I'm good at Thetha FM. But now I'm going to speed up the process. Somehow I'm going to provoke him. That we like that journalist. Comrade Khan, from 1994, struggle is over. Especially of this one of apartheid. Everything. Now we left with economical freedom, land, and other serious issues. From 1994 to 2004, now you are the member of the ANC in democracy. What difference do you see? Do you see the light? Do you see the success? Do you see the failure? Because now you are the member of this movement. Now you are in the top leadership of this movement. You strategize the Freedom Charter and everything. Now, do you see Freedom Charter prevailing in 10 years after 1994 and 2004? Let's start it from 10 years after democracy. What was your analysis in terms of that?
You know, I always talk about how we went to Parliament.
All right.
Because I was one of those privileged people who was one of the first democratically elected members of Parliament for the African National Congress and a member of the ANC in Parliament.
Wow, okay.
And I know the kind of idealism with which we went there.
Yes.
And I saw also the quality of some of the members of Parliament who were there.
All right.
They were truly committed people because they were forged by the struggle. They came out of the struggle. They're not just people who suddenly became members of Parliament.
Yes.
So there was a quality in that Parliament which I think has since deteriorated. I don't think we see the same kind of quality of members of Parliament today that we saw during those days. I remember some of those old comrades, Dr. Mohammed, Comrade Ahmed Gafrada.
Yeah.
You know, they were no longer young, but the commitment with which they were looking at all the documents and the study papers in Parliament, they really wanted to do a good job.
Yes, sir.
But you know the problem that we were faced with? we inherited an agreement in the Constitution that made it impossible for us to truly bring that liberation that I spoke about earlier, also the economic liberation, to our people. And it became worse as Parliament continued. You asked me to talk now about the period over. Considered that RDP is now no longer the right policy to follow because they were also influenced by the West and by big monopoly companies, and they were also influenced by a constitution that made it impossible to really implement fundamental economic transformation.
Who are the architect of RDP? If now we're going to adopt it at the end of the day, we think they can't even finish 5 years and then we drop it off.
Yeah.
Who's the architect? Who's introducing it?
Look, initially the RDP policy came out of the ANC's economic policy unit.
Right.
That was before 1994.
Yes.
So it was said that this is the program that we are going to introduce
All right.
as we now get into government, as the governing party. But very quickly, all the influences start pushing us away from RDP. The big white monopoly companies are influencing us. Especially Treasury and the Department of Finance was captured by these companies.
But where is the NEC now?
Wait.
Oh.
I need to
Okay,
at least tell my story a little bit.
It's fine.
Remember, they capture the Department of Finance.
Mm-hmm.
They bring in new so-called advisors who come from Goldman Sachs and from Investec and all these big companies. Those people are now the ones who write the legislation. Those people are the ones who determine the kind of economic policies that we are going to follow. Now, your question is a good one. Where's the NEC?
Yes.
The ANC NEC is paralyzed.
Within 10 years, sir.
Within 10 years, it doesn't challenge these new liberal economic policies. But you see, the rot already has started, I'm sad to say, under President Mandela. We have to acknowledge that.
Wow.
When I came out of prison, when we returned from exile as the African National Congress, we had a strong, radical economic policy program. One that was influenced by the Freedom Charter and by the African claims. We said that we have a program of nationalization of the major sectors of the economy. And that was the official economic policy program. When Mandela came out of prison, his first pronouncements was, we are with the economic policy program of nationalization and fundamental transformation of our economy. Now wait. This story I must tell you.
All right.
Because you must understand what happened in the ANC. So that is the position. That is the decision,
All right.
which is the official economic policy program of the ANC. Now comes this, a statement by Mandela in December 1990. We are standing by the radical economic policy program of nationalization. A month later, Mandela goes together with Tito Mboweni to Davos, which is where the World Economic Forum is.
He was still a governor then.
No, he was still...
Tito.
No, Tito was not governor. Tito was just an economic advisor to Mandela. This is long before Tito became governor.
Okay.
Remember, then Tito was just a very young man
All right.
and an economic advisor in the ANC. He was in the Shell House.
Influenced by who? Do we trust Comrade Tito that much to advise Mandela in terms of economical, or there was a certain influence in terms of the multinationals or other countries?
Of course. And Tito, remember, he had his education in the United Kingdom. He came from those universities. He got his economic degree from there. Here's Tito with Mandela at Davos. Tito takes the speech, and I know exactly what happened there because I was one of the people who wrote Mandela's speech.
Wow.
We wrote it. here in South Africa before Mandela went to Davos.
Okay.
Tito takes that speech. That speech says there, ANC's official economic policy program is nationalization. It is a radical transformation of our economy.
It's clear.
It's clear. Tito takes that speech, he scratches out those paragraphs.
But who's influencing that? Because it's a mandate now.
No one. He's sitting in his hotel room in Davos on his own. He changes Mandela's speech. The next thing, we are listening to Mandela speaking at the World Economic Forum. He says the program of nationalization is now rejected by the ANC. We are following now a program of Keynesian new liberal economic policy.
But now, who they must account to? Because they're a comrade of
They should account,
Yes.
but they don't.
But now they must
Mandela
come
comes back.
Yes.
That's why I said to you, this NEC is paralyzed. And it was paralyzed right from the beginning. He comes back, he's not challenged by that NEC.
But it's going to be a conference.
Because Mandela is this big figure. He's got this huge image. He can't be challenged. I was sitting in the office of Jo Marcus, who later on became the governor of the Reserve Bank. Then she was with me working in the Department of Information and Publicity of the ANC. And I was outraged when I listened to this speech by Mandela. I said, what is going on? This is not our economic policy. How can President Mandela change economic policy unilaterally, not reflecting what the position of the NEC of the ANC is? And Jo Marcus said to me, Carl, my apologies. She said, Carl, keep quiet. You're not going to challenge this. You're just going to accept it. This is what President Mandela decided to do.
Mr. Carl, let me kick your throat again. Meaning this thing of RET, it's not starting now. If you said to hold a statement for the former first president of our country and democracy to Davos, you wrote this speech for him, and it was diverted from there. Now there's young people, there's people who are listening, who are thinking maybe it's a group of people, it's a certain group, it's offended group of people and everything. If it started from the first, let's come to this one.
Let me say this. I can trace the policy of radical economic transformation for you back to the late 1940s and early 50s of the ANC.
What are you saying?
I can show you the strategy and tactic documents of the ANC where it refers to the danger of white monopoly capitalism and how we need to have a fundamental radical economic transformation program in order to empower the majority of black and especially African people. You know who you must invite to your studios one day? Professor Chris Malekane.
All right.
Professor Malekane is Professor of Economics at the University of Witwatersrand.
He's still alive?
Oh yes, he's a young man.
No, I will organize my producers to
I'll give him your phone numbers.
Please, please.
He's done a study where he traces where the concept of radical economic transformation comes from. A paper of over 50 pages showing exactly how radical economic transformation came out of those long-term historical ANC documents. So when we talk today about radical economic transformation, it's not a thing that we thought up yesterday. It comes from the history of the ANC. It is rooted in the understanding that the founding fathers of the ANC in 1912 in the Waihoek Methodist Church in Mangaung said, the land must be returned to the people. Our people have lost their land because of colonialism, and the colonists stole the land. Now, these are the policies that we today are advancing under radical economic transformation, and that's why I've always maintained radical economic transformation truly is and should be the official economic policy program of the ANC.
Thank you, sir. People, they believed in an ANC. They left, in terms of votes, all the liberation movement they joined the ANC, what we saw in 1994. They were not stupid, they were not illiterates. It's because they believed in their leaders. But at the end of the day, after 1994, we have a government of national unity, meaning the ANC did not have a plan to run the country alone. Or they wanted the apartheid ministers and presidents or cabinet to assist them to run the country. Or did they have a plan to say, if we win, we will run this country with our policies, with freedom charter and everything. We have a plan in place. What happened there? Because we saw it was a national unity now, and our people, so many people, they were so disappointed from that point of view. To say, but we voted for these people, and all of a sudden now they are mixing with apartheid people. What happened there, Mr. Khan?
That was the result of the negotiations. And remember, those negotiations started even long before the ANC was unbanned.
Oh.
There was a long run-up of visits by people from the apartheid regime, from white monopoly capitalist companies, to meet with leaders of the ANC in Lusaka, in London, everywhere in the world.
Roughly, how big? Which
It went back to the mid-1980s, where these discussions started. And you must remember, Alex, that there's also leaders in the ANC that infiltrated the ANC who were actually there as plants and sleepers for the Western European imperialist powers, intelligence agencies, and they were there and they were slowly but surely manipulating the situation that the ANC would accept as a negotiated settlement.
Meaning here we're talking about agents and spies.
Yes,
like that.
yes, exactly. Agents and spies inside the ANC, and some of them being very senior leaders inside the ANC. Now, those people played a role in slowly but surely manipulating the ANC to get to the point of these negotiations. And in the negotiations for CODESA, we made such fundamental compromises that we sold the heart of the African National Congress. We sold the essence of what our liberation struggle was all about. And that is how you ended up with this question that you asked me. Why did we end up with a government of national unity? W. de Klerk ended up the second deputy president of the country.
Yes.
Can you imagine that? Remember, there were people now in the cabinet of President Nelson Mandela who were part of the old apartheid State Security Council, who gave instructions for those apartheid forces to go across the borders into the African states, such as Botswana, such as Zimbabwe, and attack the ANC and attack those nations and kill so many people. Here they are now sitting on the same table with Mandela as part of a government of national unity.
But I'm not kicking your throat. I'm just eager because I'm gaining a lot.
It's fine.
Please don't be offended. You were chased out from your family. You went through the street of Johannesburg. You become a street kid.
Yeah.
You became vulnerable. And all of a sudden the oppressor, as you saying, the part of the government, how was your emotions? How was your feelings as a person?
I wish I can get you the speech
All right.
that I made when President Mandela delivered his first of the State of the Nation address.
Okay.
I was then a member of Parliament.
Yes, sir.
And when I got the chance to speak, I decided to address Mr. de Klerk.
Personally?
I was standing at the podium. He was sitting there in the front row in Parliament, because remember, he's now the second deputy president. He's a very senior man in that Parliament.
Yeah.
It's still there in the Hansard. If you can go and do the research, you'll find the speech.
All right.
And I said to him, Mr. de Klerk, you were chairing the State Security Council when Boipatong happened.
1992.
I walked with President Mandela there in those streets of Boipatong, and I saw the limbs cut off, dying people bleeding in those streets.
Yes.
You were a member of the State Security Council
All right.
when decisions were taken to attack ANC people in Botswana, in Lesotho, and in Zambia.
Yes, sir.
You cannot come and tell me that you should be in this position where you sit today. I said to him, you have not apologized for apartheid. Today I challenge you, stand up in this parliament and say apartheid was a crime against humanity. While I'm speaking, he stands up, he said, I don't want to listen to your nonsense, and he starts walking out of parliament.
It's on record.
It's on record. And I shouted at him from the front podium where I was standing, yes, walk your walk of shame. When I was finished with that speech, and I went back to my seat on the ANC side where the majority was sitting, President Mandela called me.
Okay.
I said, come and sit here with me.
All right.
He said, he used to call me my boy. We had a very close relationship because remember, in the early 1990s, I was the national spokesperson of the ANC.
Okay.
So I worked with President Mandela on a daily basis because I was also his spokesperson. He said to me, my boy, I think today you went too far. I think you must go and apologize to Mr. de Klerk.
What are you saying, Mr. Khan?
I said to him, Baba, please don't ask that of me. I said, Baba, the first time in my life I'm going to defy you.
That was the first time.
And he kept quiet. He never asked me again to do it. He never said to me again, you know, you must apologize. I just said to him, I won't apologize. You know, and I remember all of that. I wrote about it. You can go and look at some of the pieces that I wrote when de Klerk died. Because remember, up to his death, he couldn't get himself so far as to just get those very simple words over his lips.
Yes.
That he apologizes that apartheid was a crime against humanity. He always trying to rationalize it.
Yes.
And I spoke about this, and I talked about that incident where President Mandela said to me, I think you should apologize to Mr. de Klerk. Because, you see, I don't want to undermine President Mandela because I've got a lot of respect for him. But I think that there were compromises made during the Mandela administration, which became worse under the Thabo Mbeki administration,
Okay.
where we started to sell the basic birthright of this nation. And our people started to lose the hope that they will truly see economic transformation. And this was part of, as I've said from the beginning, a big plan amongst the white monopoly capitalists to manipulate the situation and to avoid economic transformation to take place in South Africa. But then they were suddenly faced with a problem.
Okay.
And you know what was their problem?
Okay.
Jacob Zuma. Their problem was Jacob Zuma because in Polokwane, suddenly, their very well and nice worked out plan went off the rails because they did never plan for President Jacob Zuma to become president of this country. They had a very well worked out plan.
But how did it happen?
But it was going to be President Mandela, then they actually wanted Cyril Ramaphosa even before Thabo Mbeki came in, but okay, they could settle with Thabo Mbeki. And after Thabo Mbeki, they wanted Cyril Ramaphosa. And in came President Jacob Zuma. And the reason why he came in, because at the end of President Thabo Mbeki's administration, people became so frustrated, especially the trade union movement, the left, with this sell-out new liberal economic policy program, that
Now,
they formed
you
a coalition of people, COSATU,
Yeah.
the South African Communist Party, the South African Civic Association, formed a coalition that finally brought President Jacob Zuma into power. And this was not something that was part of the plan that white monopoly capitalists had. And you know, I saw how President Jacob Zuma was under attack from the first day that he was elected in Polokwane. The attack started. You can go and listen to those tape recordings that became so controversial of McCarthy and others speaking about President Zuma. They say, how can we get him charged at the right time so that we can damage his political career, so that we can avoid him to become president? Then afterwards, how can we control him? Because the one thing you must know, for whatever other mistakes President Zuma may have made, he never was in the pocket of white monopoly capitalism. And he was always trying to follow policy programs that would bring us back to that original policy positions that I referred to earlier, which I said to you can be traced over all those decades of radical economic transformation.
You talk about the alliance here. There was negative statements. Your comrade, the former SG of Communist Party, the minister of
Blake Nzamande.
Blake, now they were fighting Zuma. The guys, some of the members of the alliance. What happened there? Because now, if you are saying they were supporting him,
you know that in Polokwane they supported him, but along the line they became co-opted, and they allowed themselves to become co-opted, and they turned against those positions that President Jacob Zuma was holding. I don't know what happened with the South African Communist Party. They became sellouts. I'm sorry to say it. I don't see anything in the SACP today that reminds me of a radical communist party standing up for the rights of the workers. Blade sold his soul for the sake of a job. He wanted to be a minister, and that was more important to him than actually being the leader of the Communist Party and the vanguard of the working class, as the Communist Party should be in terms of Marxist-Leninist definition. Blade sold that, and today it is a mockery of what the SACP should be and what the SACP was in the past, because the SACP in those early days of its existence was truly the vanguard. It was the SACP that played such a critical role in bringing some of these concepts of radical economic transformation thinking also into the ANC and into the strategy and tactics documents of the African National Congress. But today I look at the SACP, it's a pale shadow of its own former glorious self. It is a disgrace. The same thing you can say about COSATU. COSATU is sold out. COSATU is no longer today a true representative of the working class. I ask myself, how does COSATU and the SACP support someone like Cyril Ramaphosa? How do you do that? Someone who undermines every possible step along the line of implementing radical economic transformation.
That was going to be my second question, to say now, in their conferences they support, but realistically, the workers are suffering daily. They are retrenched.
The lives of the working class in this country have deteriorated terribly.
But there's still leadership there. And they still, the allies
in those positions, but what service do they bring to the workers? Do they represent the true interests of the workers? Are they interested in truly challenging this class system that we have in South Africa? Are they standing up for the working class? No, they're not.
I'm going to Thetha FM show now. Go 25 minutes after the hour 8 o'clock. Thetha talk around the table. Nakalebi talk Alex Ranuga, frequency 100.6. Station Thetha FM Kinali and Tate Carl. Niehaus, who talk about the former MKMVA commander, the former parliamentary, the former NEC member, a lot of things. I've been running this current affairs more than 12 years. And I remember maybe I'm fast tracking. In the time of COVID-19, he was arrested. COVID-19.
I was arrested in front of Escort prison where President Zuma was illegally imprisoned.
Yes.
And the funny thing, and perhaps also the strange thing, is I was arrested the afternoon of the morning that Ronald Lamola, the Minister of Justice, was outside that same prison with a huge crowd.
Doing what?
Addressing the crowd, talking to them about how President Zuma is now in prison. A big crowd. No problem. It was level 4 COVID-19 regulations, nothing wrong. No one takes action against it. Here I come in the afternoon, it was 4 o'clock in the afternoon. I arrived there, people. I walk around. I wanted to go and visit President Zuma in the prison, but the prison authorities turned it down. They refused me to go in.
Yes.
So the SABC comes to me. They say, Mr. Niehaus, can we interview you? I said, okay. So they do an interview with me. While I'm talking, a couple of people, not many, few people come and gather around to listen to what I'm saying to the SABC. Beki Cele, the Minister of Police, is sitting in Durban at one of the hotels there in Umhlanga, the Beverly Hills. He's watching TV, he gets angry with what I'm saying. Because now I'm criticizing the government and I'm saying that this sentence and this imprisonment of President Zuma is illegal. He picks up the phone, he instructs the police officers outside Escort prison, arrest him, charge him, just like that. A total contravention of what the executive should be doing and what a police force should be doing. And while I'm busy, like I'm now talking to you, I'm still busy doing a live interview. Here comes the police officers.
Are coming in like studio now.
Yeah, like they would be storming in here. They grab me by the arms, into the police van, off to the police station. Live on national television.
I was watching that.
Now, as I'm inside that police station, and I'm not going to mention names, there are senior police officers there who come to the holding cells. The one of them came to me, a lady, and she started crying.
Oh my goodness.
She said, I don't want you here. She said, this is what has been done to us. We've been forced to arrest you. And then she takes my hands and she says, I love Baba. She's talking about President Zuma. She says, why are we doing this to you?
But it's not having authority. It's her own personal feeling, but the authority is not on her own hands.
Her authority is she must arrest me. So there I was arrested. I was then charged. I had to go all the time traveling from my home here in Johannesburg to Escort. I went there 7 times. Every time they remand the case in the Escort Magistrates Court. They had no case. They had no case. And the fact of the matter is, everything was there on television, but yet they charged me. And eventually the magistrate, and really I was impressed by her, a woman, young woman magistrate, she said, look guys, now I've had enough. This man has done nothing wrong. I'm throwing this case out of court.
What about regulations and what?
No, she said, but this man has not broken any regulations. I can watch the television footage that you show me. I can see there are not more than 50 people around him. It's not true. He's not broken the regulations. In fact, all the time that he's speaking there, he's got a mask on. Then she says, you must still explain to me, she said to the National Prosecuting Authority, to the prosecutor, you must explain to me how on that afternoon, when you arrested and now charged Mr. Niehaus, that morning Ronald Lamola was there with more than 100 people, and you haven't charged him.
What is this?
She says to me, Mr. Niehaus, get out of that dock and go home. We've wasted enough of your time, I apologize. Now, I still say thanks to her because she is an example of an officer of the law who was not yet captured. Mm-hmm. And she stood her ground. Now, I'm suing the South African Police Service and the National Prosecuting Authority for wrongful arrest and for malicious prosecution. That case is still going on. My attorney and my advocate is the same advocate that works with some of the cases of President Zuma, Advocate Dali Mpofu.
Oh.
And we're going to deal with that matter. Because I'm not going to let it go. I was humiliated live on national television because Beki Kele got irritated. He must answer.
I'm going to take information within our 29 minutes before the hour, 9 o'clock, Thetha Talk, around the table, frequency 100.6, Nakale Alex Ranuga, frequency 100.6, Thetha FM, number 1 radio station in this particular province, can lead a very extensive interview with that Kanyas. I cut the story short, I ran quickly.
Okay.
You fought for your membership in the ANC.
Yes.
You sacrificed your life. You sacrificed your family. Now you had to sacrifice your membership again. Take us through that. How did it happen?
Alex, what happened relates to this history that I told you about President Zuma's arrest
Yes, sir.
and imprisonment. I was there at Nkandla when President Zuma had to hand himself over
You're right.
to the correctional services.
Yes.
It was a heartbreaking experience.
An old man.
Not just an old man, someone who was not even sentenced in a proper court of law. Remember, the Constitutional Court just had a procedure, a legal procedure, where they contravened the law. Even the minority judgment there that was brought out by Mr. Justice Jafta and Mrs. Justice Tron said, you are breaking the law in sentencing this man. But there I was there at Nkandla with my fellow MKMVA comrades.
Mm.
And those MKMVA comrades were camping out there. They were forming a human chain to say we want to protect Msholozi.
We're human shield.
We want to be a human shield. We don't want this to happen to our commander. Because remember, President Zuma is the commander of Umkhonto Sizwe.
Yes.
But finally, and I saw the greatness of the man there, he said, I don't want bloodshed in my name. I don't want to see these soldiers, some of them who are now old, who are prepared once again to sacrifice their lives. I don't want them to be run over by police Caspers and police force who come here who want to arrest them. Let me rather go.
It happened the other way around.
Mm.
People who are supposed to sacrifice for him, he sacrificed for them.
He sacrificed for them. And he got, you know, the night, it was close to 12 o'clock, just before he had to hand himself over. I was there. He came out, he had a tracksuit on, he carried his own carry bag. He said, now I'm going. Because not in my name can I see this bloodshed coming. You know, we stood where we cried. His children were there. Everyone was standing outside as the car pulled up to take him. And then very softly, one of the children, one of the daughters started singing, Shinua, Shinua. And all of us started singing. And Baba went and started shaking our hands. And I wanted to cry. And he took me by the arms. He said, be strong, comrade. He's the man who's going to prison. He's the man who's facing, at his age, this humiliation. And he is encouraging me, someone who's more than 25 years younger than him. That's the strength of President Zuma. So I was there. I spoke at a press conference on behalf of Umkhonto Sizwe, where I said, what happened here is unjust. It is wrong. It is an indication of the capture of our legal system. I spoke strongly, but with the mandate of Umkhonto Sizwe Military Veterans Association, who sent me there as their national spokesperson. Now, it was on basis of those statements that I made that then a couple of weeks later, the ANC NEC decides that I must be charged.
Can you go back, Mr. Cow? Because I'm confused here. the national media was saying, the president, when they took the former president, the crowd did not know. He was underground. All of a sudden they saw it in the TV that he's in prison.
No.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
The people knew the cars going out. President Zuma left. He didn't want everyone there outside in Kandla, in the streets, to know.
The entire crowd, yes.
Because he was trying to prevent that crowd rising up in anger.
Because they were there to protect him in the first place.
They wanted to protect him. There were thousands of people, Alex. Thousands.
Jesus Christ.
Now, I addressed a press conference there where those people gathered around. You can go and look at the footage. That whole press conference is still there on YouTube. And I said, what happened here is wrong. It is an aberration of justice. And then a few weeks later, the NEC of the ANC decides I must be charged for having said that. They said I was undermining the judiciary.
But where do they come in?
So they charged me, the NDC, National Disciplinary Committee of the ANC. They brought these charges. That was 18 months ago. They kept on trying to make those charges stick against me, with one disciplinary hearing after the other. First they wanted to bring Gwede Mantashe to come and give evidence. Mantashe ran away. Because he knew that there were times in the years before where he had made statements criticizing the judiciary. He knew that. Then they tried to bring Blade Nzimande, you just referred to him earlier.
Yes.
Blade ran away because he knew there were times that he criticized the judiciary. And I had the examples. Then eventually in desperation they brought Fikile Mbalula. Now what does Fikile Mbalula know about that history? But they bring him, and of course Fikile is ambitious. He wanted to endear himself to President Cyril Ramaphosa. He is already thinking about becoming the Secretary General of the ANC. So he comes and starts giving evidence. As he starts, the legal representative that I had, Comrade Matthew Sposa, says, Fikile, I'm going to ask you, why did you say that everyone who goes to the Zondo Commission just goes there to urinate? At that moment, Fikile suddenly says, sorry, I can't hear you. There's something wrong with the Zoom connection here. Sorry, I can't get... The whole thing falls apart. Yeah?
Did that happen?
I have it on the record. It's there. The whole thing falls apart. They adjourn the disciplinary.
But everybody can see.
Now they bring it back. Now they say Fikile no longer wants to come. Every time they say he must come to give evidence, he has an excuse. So eventually they write for him a statement. They take it to him and say, just sign. They bring an unsigned statement as evidence against me. We say, but this can't be.
Unsigned statement.
Unsigned.
But is that constitutional?
No, it's not. It's not. So we say, look, this is not admissible. Oh, they say, well, we have these videos where Mr. Niehaus, Comrade Carl, says all these things. He says that he doesn't deny that he said. I said, yes, I don't deny that I've said it. I have said it, but I haven't broken anything in terms of the ANC's constitution. They say, no, on the basis of that evidence, we find you guilty.
Just like that?
Just like that. We're now going to confer amongst ourselves what sentence we're going to give you. But before they do that, the chair of the disciplinary committee, Ralph Nkajima, says to me, have you got anything to say in mitigation? I said, no, I've got nothing to say. I will tell you my history, and I tell them that. I said, but apologize, not a word. I have done nothing wrong. I still believe in exactly those things that I said, that it is wrong what was done to President Zuma, that our judiciary is captured, and I will not apologize. So, the Monday before the national conference of the ANC starts,
in Nazareth,
I get a call from Comrade Supramo Mupelo,
Former chairperson.
Yeah, my good friend,
All
comrade.
right. All right.
Says to me, Comrade Carl, do you know what's going on social media? I wasn't that morning looking at social media. I said, no, I haven't seen anything strange. He says, there's a letter out there from the National Disciplinary Committee that you've been expelled from the ANC. I said, what? Shouldn't they first send that letter to me?
In your absence.
Before they throw it out into the public domain? They never sent it to me. Until I sit here today, Alex, I've never formally received the letter from that National Disciplinary Committee telling me in person, Comrade Carl, we've expelled you from the ANC. No, they threw it out into the media. I turned the television on, breaking news. Carl Niehaus expelled from the ANC. Okay? Now, Alex, and this is, and I'm going to become emotional now. I joined the ANC when I was 19. It costed me my relationship with my Afrikaner family. With my dad chased me out of the house, as I've told you.
Yes, sir.
I was arrested for the ANC. I was severely tortured at John Vorster Square. I was for months kept in solitary confinement. As I'm sitting here, I can take these headphones off. I can show you these. These are extremely powerful hearing aids.
Yeah, I can see them. Yeah.
With which I cannot hear without them. Because of the torture, I lost 67% of my hearing. I was beaten to a pulp by the South African Security Police because of my membership of the ANC. Despite the fact that they tortured me like that, I can take these glasses off, you can look here.
I can see, yeah.
The scar on my nose. From beatings. I never sold a single comrade out. No one. Ever. Comrade Obed Papela, who was detained with me, can tell you how one day the police made a mistake and brought both of us from the cells to the same showers. How I was bleeding from mouth, from nose, how he was bleeding because he was also beaten up. How our blood was there in that shower, how it mixed and went down that drain. That was my life. That is what I sacrificed in this struggle. I never sold anyone out. When I was standing in court and the judge said to me, young man, will you, if we release you, ever continue with the fight against apartheid? I said, yes. He said, the current president of South Africa is P.W. Botha. I said, yes. He said, will you even be prepared to kill him? I said, yes. Because he is a man committing crimes against humanity. And then the judge said to me, young man, you better check what you say, because I may just decide to sentence you to death. And I said to him, your honor, suit yourself. Now, this is who I am. I stuck to my guns. I fought for this ANC, who I love, who I sacrificed everything for. And at the end, this is what they do. They throw an expulsion letter into the public domain, humiliating me. I then went and I appealed. I appealed. Because I wanted to fight for my membership. It's my immediate reaction. I love this organization. It's my life. It's my family. I wanted to fight for this membership. I appealed in terms of the ANC's own constitution. When you appeal, your expulsion is suspended. The status quo is maintained until that appeal is heard. I was a delegate from my branch to go to the ANC conference. I'm also a former National Executive Committee member of the ANC. I was a member of the NEC. So in terms of my delegate status and my status as a former member of the NEC of the ANC, I've got the right to attend that conference. I went there. I asked at the accreditation center, can I please get my accreditation? You know what they did?
Mm-hmm.
They said, get the hell out of here. We're now calling the police. We're going to arrest you if you stay here. I was marched out of that accreditation center by police. That's the humiliations I had to face. Then Fikile Mbalula becomes the Secretary General of the ANC, and the first thing he says is, we're going to teach these guys lessons. We are going to discipline them. So I sat up. I said, look, I don't know this ANC. It's clear to me that if I continue with my appeal, the only thing they're going to do is to humiliate me more.
It's enough.
It's time for me to go.
Can I go to the breakout community?
And that is how I finally resigned.
Yes, sir.
Comrade Alex,
Yeah, community.
I think people they will understand today because whatever Comrade Carl that is explaining to us, it's some of the things that we know deeply. Some we've been saying this for almost 20 years.
That's true.
The ANC is not the ANC anymore. It's a Tagari party. Look at, we can make a lot of examples. You see, when I was listening in Comrade Kali, I don't know what happened. I just opened the radio out of nowhere. And that I will find Comrade Kali speaking. I was so like, what? Is it my lucky or what? I would never know that Comrade Kali is coming on Thetha FM. You see, Comrade Alex,
Yes, sir.
I'm not the man that you used to cry.
No, I know.
But today when Carl was speaking, a person that was sitting next to my left-hand seat in my car, I Comrade Temba never seen you like this. It's my first time. You no more speak to me. You just keep quietly and listen to this radio. I don't know what is happening to you.
Stop. I will not stop fighting for our people and for the improvement of the lives of our people until the last breath comes over my lips.
Comrade Carl,
Yeah.
you know me very well, and you know me how I feel about this organization.
Yes, I know, Thetha.
Comrade Carl, I never give up.
Yes, sir.
You know, we mustn't be very exclusivist about the soldiers of Umkhonto we see.
Yes, sir.
Our liberation struggle was fought by soldiers and liberation fighters who were in exile, but also those inside the country. Remember, Comrade Owa Tambo always spoke about the internal machinery, those who are inside the country fighting.
Meaning the SDU and the community.
SDUs, communities,
Yeah.
also trained MK cadres who came into the country and who were part of those SDUs and who were helping to give direction.
Within the country.
Yeah, so we should never be, as MK soldiers, also try to be elitist and say we are better soldiers than others.
Yes, sir.
Those young people in the SDUs who fought in the streets with stones, who were fighting with sticks and stones for our liberation, made just as great, if not a greater contribution to our liberation struggle than those trained MK soldiers. So I'm not interested in this distinction between one fighter against apartheid and the other. All of those who fought against apartheid deserve recognition, and they deserve to be acknowledged for the struggle and for the sacrifices that they made. There's young people who were shot in these streets of our townships. Some of them still carry those wounds, both psychological and physical.
Yes, sir.
And they do not get taken care of. Because somehow, sometimes we want to say there were better soldiers and lesser soldiers. No.
Yes.
Everyone contributed in their own way to their own ability
Yes.
to change this country. It was a people's movement and a people's struggle that brought apartheid to its knees, and we must never forget that. Yeah.
Despite the differences. Because others will be criticizing them to say, you ran away while we were fighting. Others who were saying we were trained professionally. Because there's that confusion of not recognizing each other, but they are all soldiers.
All soldiers. You know, in early 1994, in January 1994, before our first democratic elections in April 1994,
Yes.
I was part of the delegation of ANC leaders, which included also Cyril Ramaphosa,
All right.
that went to the East Rand.
Yes.
And as we were walking in the township there, we were told by the people there that it's safe. And suddenly,
Yes.
the machine gun
Yes.
fire started, coming from one of the hostels.
Yes, sir.
And you can see that footage. Cyril Ramaphosa, because he's not a trained soldier, he freezes. He doesn't go down on the ground.
He stands just like that.
He's standing.
Okay.
And if you look at that footage, the person who tackles him from the back and brings him down to the ground is
Yes.
me. I'm pulling him down. Come down. They're going to shoot you here.
Yes.
But if you look at the people, what I really want to talk about is those young people who with great courage, some of them only with a handgun, not with a machine gun,
Yes.
started storming towards that hostile firing.
Okay.
Young people, people of the self-defense units, who were defending us as the leadership there,
Yes.
also including Cyril Ramaphosa. They saved Cyril's life that day there. They saved our lives, those young self-defense unit fighters. Now, must we say today they're lesser soldiers?
But the president does not recognize them with his cabinet. They even disbanded them. I don't want to talk about disband.
I don't even want to start because I'll become emotional again about Umkhonto we Sizwe Military Veterans Association.
Yes.
That was disbanded by this NEC under pressure from Cyril Ramaphosa. The main person that pushed that Umkhonto we Sizwe Military Veterans Association must be disbanded was Cyril Ramaphosa. And why did he push for us to be disbanded? Because we were criticizing him. We were raising our concerns about the treatment of President Jacob Zuma. We were raising these issues around radical economic transformation and the lack of implementation of the resolutions around economic transformation of the 54th National Conference. So then he suddenly pushed that we must be disbanded, illegally so. Because Umkhonto we Sizwe Military Veterans Association is an autonomous association with its own constitution. Some of the NEC members in the NEC even stood up and said, but you know, comrades, you can't disband MKMVA, it's illegal. They didn't care. They just proceeded, and today MKMVA still exists because we committed to exist, but they did everything within their means to destroy this only alliance that truly represent the interests of Umkhonto we Sizwe veterans.
Comrade Carl, let me kick your throat on you cannot teach us, you are an elder of course. Others will be saying, but this is a political co-host. Why is that? No, it's a question. Nobody that can dictate.
Let me hear.
Which country that has ever done this to abandon their own veterans, military veterans in Africa, continental countries, even international? Because I'm a reader, I'm a researcher.
Yeah.
They embrace, all of them they embrace why this country, it's abandoned, it's humiliating, undermining. Others, they're saying when they talk to me that they are sick, they talk alone, they're crazy, they need mental health, which is true. But the question is why they need mental health help. Who must help them? Why are they sick? What about their families? Who's concerned about their social welfare in terms of that? Is it based on your experience? Which country has ever done this? If anything can happen to this country, do we have a backup?
Alex, one of the most haunting sayings that there is a nation is judged by its ethics and its morality on how it treats its liberation veterans.
Wow.
And this country, if it is judged by that yardstick, is in a terrible problem. Nowhere in Africa are military veterans treated as disgustingly as in this South Africa. Our military veterans are not taken care of. They don't get the medical care they need. Their dependents don't get the support that they deserve. You know, I look at some of these comrades. They come to meetings of Umkhonto, the Military Veterans Association. They're dressed in those MK combat. You can see that combat is old. You can see it's threadbare.
Oh my goodness.
But they wear it with pride because that is their history, that is their pride.
They were trained for
They
that.
were trained for that. And you know what these people do? Even some of these nincompoops in the National Executive who were not even born when those comrades were laying down their lives, left the country, went for training. They laugh at them, they say you wear Pep Store outfits. They make sarcastic remarks about how pathetic those camos look. They don't recognize and respect that history. They don't understand that that comrade puts that camo on because it's the one thing that he or she has as part of their pride and part of their memory of what they have done for this country. No one, no group in this country had made bigger sacrifices for the liberation of this nation but the Umkhonto were veterans. They made huge sacrifices. Today they're being treated as dirt. They're being spat on. This administration by Cyril Ramaphosa doesn't care for them. The one administration in our country that tried to do something for military veterans was President Zuma. It was under President Zuma that MKMVA got eventually its status. It was under President Zuma that we managed to get the Military Veterans Act of 2011, because those things had to be done. But the administration is falling apart. The Department of Military Veterans is dysfunctional. I get so many letters of comrades who say, we're supposed to get educational grants for our children and for our dependents. They don't pay them. We're supposed to get houses. We don't get houses. You know how many of the MK veterans are living under bridges?
But there's DMV.
I'm talking about DMV. Dysfunctional. Corrupt, stealing the money that is supposed to go to the military veterans. I can give you the lists of corruption that is going on in DMV, on everything, from transport, from conferences, from everything that is being done there is looking after themselves and filling and stuffing their own pockets. Now, I want to give you the reason why this is happening. Because there's a long historical history behind this. No, please, Alex. This I must talk about.
I'm sorry.
Because it explains part of the selling out process in the ANC.
No, it's okay.
You remember the criticisms that Comrade Chris Hani expressed about the negotiations. There are short videos on social media that shows him talking about how concerned he is how the negotiations are selling out the most basic principles of the ANC. There's a very haunting video where he talks about, I fear that my comrades are going to start caring more for driving big Mercedes-Benzes and BMWs and living in mansions and having fat bank accounts and serving the people. Now, part of the early sell-out process and the negotiations of selling out had to do also with killing off Umkhonto we Sizwe. And that is why so early on in the negotiations there was this push by the apartheid regime and also by Western powers that the armed struggle must be renounced, that it must be brought to an end. And that was pushed through by Thabo Mbeki and other comrades in the NEC, in the conference, first national conference of the ANC in Durban. And there are also other videos of Comrade Chris saying, I am angry about this. I'm upset that this has happened. Because it's not just about the lack of recognition of these military veterans. It is about destroying a fighting capability of our people to fight back in order to continue to oppress them and in order to push through this sell-out negotiation project. And I still maintain, Alex, I may not have all the information, but I know when I understand history and my gut tells me what's happening.
Yes, sir.
I still maintain that Chris Hani was killed exactly because of those criticisms that he expressed. And because he was saying this negotiating process is a sell-out negotiating process. Chris was not killed by just two lonely right-wingers. There was a big conspiracy, and that conspiracy included, and I'm saying it, and anyone must come and contradict me, also leaders of the ANC. So we need to develop now, as part of the RET movement,
Yes.
a clear program of action,
Yes, sir.
which we are going to build out in every province, in every region of this country.
Yes, sir.
We will create branches that will go down to municipalities.
All right.
We're going to get those comrades to work for radical economic transformation.
Okay.
And it must be practical. It's about what happens in your area,
Okay.
how you are actually going to start building an economy there that serves the people.
Yes, sir.
We are going to have a clear 10-point plan of the important RET principles that must be implemented and how they will be implemented in practice in communities.
Okay.
So what I'm saying is the future must hold this policy program, this return to our ideological understanding
Yes,
of
sir.
where we come from.
Yes.
And then we're going to implement it practically in our lives.
Yes, sir.
And we're going to build this movement as a direct counter to the sell-out situation that has developed in the ANC. You know, one of the most awful things I saw during this 55th National Conference of the ANC
In Nazareth.
in Nazareth
Yeah.
is our people are suffering, my brother.
It's
I don't
true.
need to tell them.
Honestly, yes.
Our people don't know where the next meal comes from. People don't. There
ESCOM,
is no employment.
ESCOM retrenchment.
We
It's
see
a
what
case.
is happening.
It's a
Now,
case.
then we sent delegates to Nazareth. First of all, the process of the selection of those delegates is dubious. It is fraudulent. Those delegates come there. They get paid huge sums of money as bribes to vote for Cyril Ramaphosa. They don't even stay in that conference to wait for the commissions that must discuss these policy issues that I have just spoken about.
Yes, sir.
You can go and look at the photos of what the commission rooms look like. Empty, no one there. The
discussion documents are not even taken out of the boxes. It's not even unwrapped from the plastic. That same time when this is happening, I had to go and see a comrade.